Welcome to part 2 of my workshop tour. In this one I'll be showing you my shed extension and dust extraction system, and I'll talk about what works well, what doesn't work so well, and what I'd have done differently if I had my time back. And later on I'll show you around in the garage that I rent to store all of my wood and materials. So starting with the shed extension, I built it about 18 months ago to hold my dust extractor, my cyclone and my air compressor. When I published the build video, I got a few comments from people who are much more clever than I am, saying that it would fall down because I wanted it to be cantilevered. There are no legs or anything supporting the structure, and I wanted it like that so that I could mow my lawn without anything getting in the way. And those people were absolutely right, because as you can see, it looks like it's going to fall down any day now. I have full videos about the extension build and the installation of the dust extraction system, which go into loads of detail, and I'll link to those videos in the description box below. It might be worth watching those if you haven't already before you watch this one. I made 5 blast gates for my workshop using some 6mm plywood so that I could isolate the dust extraction to each of my machines. One for my bench sander, one for my bandsaw, one for the motor saw, one for the table saw, and one which I can use for hand power tools like my sander or circular saw, for example, at my workbench. I attached the PVC pipe to the blast gates using silicone sealant, and that didn't really work out well. The sealant was simply not strong enough, and some of the gates lasted a few weeks before breaking, others lasted a few months, but one by one they all failed. So I peeled off all of the sealant and instead used hot glue to secure the pipes back onto the blast gates. You can see that I've used quite a lot of hot glue here, and it doesn't look pretty, but it has worked really well, and they are nice and solid now, and I haven't had any issues since doing that. The blast gate for my hand operated power tools at the workbench is the longest pipe run to the extractor at about 4 meters, and to keep the pipe run as short as possible in order to maximize the suction, I mounted it to the left hand side of my workbench as I face it. But because I'm right-handed, having it mounted on the left isn't ideal, and when I'm using the sander, for example, the hose is just kind of awkward and in the way, and I wish I'd have run a bit more PVC pipe to the right-hand side of my workbench. As it is, I just tend to use the end of my workbench instead, like this, just so that the hose doesn't get in the way. A lot of the comments on my original dust extraction video were about the small 40mm diameter PVC pipe that I chose to use, and I mainly chose it because of lack of space in my small workshop. I didn't want the pipes to get in the way. People who know more about this stuff than I do said that the small pipes are restricting the amount of airflow and suction that my very powerful dust extractor is capable of pulling. Now, I don't necessarily regret using the 40mm pipe, and the suction is powerful enough to do everything I need it to do, but based on those comments, if I were to do this again, I definitely would consider going for a larger PVC pipe. If you look around, you can get 63mm pipe here in the UK, and obviously more common sizes like 100mm. No matter what size you opt for though, you can guarantee that you're going to have a few issues connecting up the pipes to your machines, because none of them seem to have any standardization in terms of outlet sizes. So no matter what size you go for, you're going to need some adapters, possibly some gaffer tape, or you might even choose to use this. This is rubber bicycle tyre inner tube. I think I saw this tip on a Peter Millard 10-minute workshop video, and it works great for adapting the sizes of pipe because it's quite stretchy, so you can get a nice tight fit. The 40mm pipe that I used works great for dust, but if you suck up anything bigger like shavings, it can get blocked up quite easily. I'm pretty careful to only use my system for dust though. For shavings, like plainer shavings, I just sweep them up with a brush because my system would not cope with it. I do really like having solid pipes like the PVC ones as opposed to the flexible pipes, as they're nice and robust. A lot of people say there are potential problems with static and even possible combustion and explosions. But from what I've read, there's never actually been evidence of an incident like that occurring, so I think that's probably scaremongering, but don't take my word for it. If you can find transparent pipe, that would work even better, because that way if a blockage does occur, you don't have to play detective to work out where it is. You can buy it at places like Axminster and Rutland's in the UK. They sell dust extraction kits, but having looked at the reviews and the flimsiness of the blast gates, I'd probably still opt for buying my own pipe and making my own blast gates. One question I've been asked a lot is whether I've had any issues with my cyclone dust box collapsing as a result of the pressure from the vacuum. That has happened when I've accidentally accidentally closed all of the blast gates and the dust extractor is turned on. But fortunately the container that I used is pretty heavy duty, so it hasn't broken or split as a result of that. But just to be on the safe side, a few months after installing the system, I did make a little wooden frame which is just glued and nailed together that sits inside the cyclone dust box, so if I make the same mistake again, that wooden frame will reinforce the box and prevent it from collapsing. Dylan has come to say hello. Say hello then. It's over here, look. So those were the things that I'd have either done differently or that I've changed already. Now, a few other things I thought it'd be worth mentioning that are working well. The fans which I installed to my shed extension are not only good for airflow, they are actually pretty vital. Before I got into the habit of turning the fans on each time I go into the workshop, which is what I do now, I made the mistake of using the extractor as I was making a few cuts at the table saw while the fans were switched off, and the extractor actually overheated and so the power to it cut out. It took a few minutes before it would power on again, and that was a good lesson learned, and ever since I've always turned the fans on before using the extractor, and I haven't had any issues since. I'm also very happy with the extractor that I chose, and I'm glad I bought the M-Class HEPA filter to go with it. That stops the small harmful particles of dust being exhausted from the machine. A lot of people in the comments section of the original video asked what the point was of having an M-Class extractor when it's not exhausting dust inside the workshop. And that's a valid point, but there are two reasons why I opted for it. Firstly, I don't really want small particles of dust being exhausted in my workshop extension either, as it'd get really dusty and make going in there quite unpleasant. And secondly, this whole shed extension idea was just a temporary thing really. It's a makeshift solution to give me more space in my workshop until I moved into a bigger workspace. When I move into the new workshop, this extractor is going to be in the workspace with me, sharing the air that I breathe, so that's why getting an M-Class extractor was important to me. I also love having a cyclone. It was definitely worth the extra work and cost to set up. Emptying the dust is now so much easier and less maintenance is needed to the filters of my extractor too, so I'm really pleased I did that. When I get to the new workshop, I'm probably going to use 100mm PVC pipe this time because I'll have more space for it. I also plan to make my own blast gates again because the ones I made work really well. Having said that, I haven't done much research on it yet, so if anyone has any suggestions to share of pipes or blast gates to use, please do let me know in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. I'm not going to be able to spend loads of money on it though, so whatever solution I go with is going to need to be inexpensive. My air compressor is also housed in my shed extension, and that's great too. It frees up lots of space in the workshop and also cuts down on noise. Having said that, my air compressor is extremely quiet anyway. I have a video where I review this compressor, so if you're interested in that, there'll be a link to that below too. So I'm just off to the garage now, and I thought I'd talk a little bit about what I've got stored there. I've got an awful lot of wood at the moment, and that's because I'm renting this garage anyway, so it makes sense just to stockpile as much as possible. Of course, now I'm moving, that becomes a bit of a difficulty because I've got to move everything. I'm not really a hoarder. I don't keep anything. I don't have a lot of books, CDs, DVDs, none of that stuff. But when it comes to wood, if I think it could be useful one day, I keep it. I've still got the two CC41 chairs that I restored in a video. I really like these, but they haven't sold, so I think maybe I'll use them in the new house somewhere. Up here is a fruit bowl. That was part of the Bowl Without a Lathe challenge, and a couple of cat bed cabinets. And behind that is my scaffold board table with yellow legs, and also my beech and sapele table. And here are two cat beds in bubble wrap and my mahogany footstool. So all of this stuff just hasn't sold yet, so it's being stored. This pile of stuff here I've just thrown in recently. Some walnut MDF. These were offcuts from a dartboard cabinet that I made recently. I've got some scaffold boards that were donated to me by a friend of mine. And behind that, lots and lots of sheets of salvaged plywood, and there's some OSB in here too. Some of the sheets are painted, as you can see, but all of this is likely just to be used as cladding at my new workshop, so I'm not really too worried about the condition of this stuff. Probably all going to get painted anyway. All of this OSB down here was outside of a shop. It just said free on it, so I swung by and picked it up. On the bottom shelf here, I've got mostly softwoods, pine, spruce, and a couple of other scaffold boards there too. And the shelf above that is nicer pieces of hardwood. So I've got some slabs of beech, some ash, and also some parts from an old bed which I've just recently thrown on here. I think this wood might be rubber wood, but I'm not sure. But this was donated to me by a friend who had a broken bed and wanted to get rid of it. And this here, I don't know whether this is some sort of architrave, but it's solid oak and the two pieces are quite long, so I pulled these out of a skip. And moving further back into the darkness, on this top shelf I've got lots and lots of pieces of sapele, and under that some smaller sort of hardwood pieces that I can use for trim and things like that. Underneath that, lots and lots of salvaged 3x2s and 4x2s, mostly pine, and some bed slats over there too. And then on the bottom shelf, quite difficult to film, but I've got lots and lots of slabs of beech. Some of these are 1.5 and 2 inches thick, but they're all very twisted and very warped. So I really need to find someone locally that has a big industrial planer that can help me out to get these flat. Either that or build some sort of router jig. At the back here I've got the drawers from the bookcase conversion project that I did for my brother, and some leftover insulation too, which will come in handy at the new workshop. And over here is my sheet materials rack. This was another project on my channel and it is absolutely loaded at the moment. It's actually double stacked in some areas. I've got so much plywood, MDF and all of that stuff that's going to come in really useful in future. And this is pretty disorganised too, so you'll see some chipboard in amongst some oak veneered MDF, plywood, melamine, all sorts of stuff really. In front of that I've got some salvaged metal fence poles, and I've got lots of fixings for these somewhere too. I had a project in mind for these, but it's something that I've never got round to so far. Over here is a tabletop from an earlier project which some people might recognise. I was considering selling that table, but I wasn't really happy enough with how I built it, so I ended up just removing the tabletop and storing it in here, and hopefully one day I'll find a use for it. This thing here is solid oak. This was donated to me by a friend. I think it came from an old desk or something. This is an old cot headboard. I found that in the streets. This is the bulkhead for my van, which I removed because I wanted to fit longer pieces of wood in the back. And back there is some more salvaged plywood. Over here is the rest of that rubber wood bed that was donated to me. So here is the headboard and the footboard. I've got a couple of ideas for what I might use this for, but I haven't got around to those yet either. My oil-filled radiator is stored here too. I use this in the workshop in the winter, but in the summer it sits in storage. Over here I've got some logs. These were donated to me by one of my YouTube viewers actually. If you're watching, thank you. Here I've got some more salvaged coffee table legs. I've used these on projects before, but I've still got plenty left. And down here I've got lots of pieces of white melamine still in their packaging. These I think were the tops from some old office cabinets at work, but we'd no longer had the cabinets, so these were thrown in a skip and I took these home too. Not sure what I'll do with those yet either. I know I'll get asked where I get all of my wood and salvage materials from, because I get asked that all of the time. I have made a video about it which I'll link to in the description box below, and I've been thinking recently that I might do a follow-up to that video too, so make sure you're subscribed to my channel and you'll probably see that at some point in the future. But to summarise really quickly, Facebook Marketplace, Gumtree, eBay, reclamation yards, alleyways, skips, gardens, but always ask permission before you take anything, of course. I also get a lot of donations from people who know about what I do, because I've been doing this for years now, so friends, family, even people that watch my videos sometimes get in touch and say, I've got an old item of furniture, can you do anything with it? Or I've got some wood in my garden, do you want it? So I think that's it for this one. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already for more weekly woodworking videos. You can also support the channel on Patreon if you'd like to receive early access to the videos, project plans and cut lists, exclusive content, and a name credit at the end of my videos too. Thank you for watching.